What's up guys, Block FPL here and welcome back to another team selection video for Fantasy Premier League. Today let's talk about Game Week 27, which is kind of a double game week. We have Man City and Southampton that have two fixtures this week, so they're the most likely captain options I would say, especially Man City. Taking a look back at last week, well, I'm not even going to pull it up, but I got 65 points, my triple captaincy failed. Calvert-Lewin blanked in both games. They played him basically as a right striker, and that really hurt his production. He did have a big chance that he missed, and I suppose a lot of the crosses could have fell to him, but they didn't, and it was overall a terrible choice. But the likes of Kane, Bruno, Salah didn't really outperform him by that much, so it didn't hurt too bad, I suppose. But we move on. And let's talk about this week. I've made one transfer so far, and that is Rashford to Son. I would like to do Barnes to Son, but I don't have the money for that, and I don't want to take a hit right now. I think I will likely end up transferring Barnes to a bench player anyway, because I can play this 3-4-3 if I had just have Barnes as a 4.5. So that's the way I'm leaning right now, and that would give me some money to potentially get Kane in the future. And give me more possibilities. Upgrading the likes of Ings. After this double game week, I don't really like Ings. He has good fixtures, but Southampton simply have been poor. And now let's get into players to target and players to sell for me, as well as captaincy. So me personally, I'm in a difficult situation because Ings, like I said, hasn't been great recently. Southampton have not been scoring goals, but they have the double game week. Then they play Brighton, they blank. I'm going to free hit in that blank most likely, so that doesn't affect me at all. Then they play Burnley, West Brom, Crystal Palace. So do I really want to sell Ings here? I'm not so sure, really. And then we got Calvert-Lewin, and it's basically the exact same situation. He hasn't been great. They play Chelsea this week, which I may bench him for that. But if I sell him, I'm going to miss out on Burnley. The blank doesn't affect me. Then Crystal Palace, Brighton, and then it gets a little bit difficult after that. But the next three after this week are pretty good. So I'm not really sure if it's worth selling him. But both of these guys are more expensive than the likes of Watkins, maybe even Diagne, the West Brom striker. So they're not great options, but I just don't know if it's worth a transfer out for me personally. And I know a lot of people have Calvert-Lewin, and it's kind of a difficult decision, especially if you're going to free hit in Game Week 29. If you're not, it makes it much easier to go from Calvert-Lewin to Watkins or a move like that if you don't have other things to deal with. Now, as far as Barnes replacements goes, which effectively I've brought Son in for that reason, if I had the money, that's what I would do. I would go Son over Bale, Son over the double game week. In the first match, he had an expected assist of 1.7, which is very high for one match. And then in the very next game, he follows that up with an expected assist of 0.92, which again is very high for one match. He's shown great creativity recently. Kane had a lot of chances he could have scored. And we all know that Son can finish well, and he generally produces a good goal and assist ratio per 90 minutes. So I think he's a solid option. You can't really go wrong with Son, and that gives me my only Tottenham player. Tottenham and Aston Villa players will look pretty good for you if you're not free hitting in Game Week 29 because you need players that play that week. And I've brought Son in even though that doesn't really matter to me. So that's how good of an option I think he is. There's really not any alternatives, which is why I had to get rid of Rashford instead of Barnes. Like at that price range, really, I think the guy that stands out the most is Rafinha. He plays in the blank. Not the best fixtures though, but you could take a chance with him. Other than that, I mean, I know some people have looked at Traore. I'm not a huge fan of him. If we knew Grealish was out for a while, I would be a fan of El Ghazi. He's likely on penalties. He puts up good numbers when he plays. He's my favorite of the Villa guys while he starts. He scores when he starts. That's basically how it goes for him so far this season. Other than that, I think the main guy I've looked at is Mason Mount. And he's my overall selection for midfield if you have to have a Barnes replacement and you free hit in 29, or if you don't need somebody that plays. Mount is the overall best, but most people aren't going to free hit in 29, so you're probably going to end up wanting somebody like Rafinha. But I personally like Mason Mount. He's put up good numbers recently. He even took a penalty. I wouldn't expect that to happen in the future, but even without that penalty, he's looked very good. And he's on a good team, and that's something that's hard to find right now. We have Bruno, we have Salah, and that covers Man United and Man City, both struggling. A lot of expensive options there. So there's really not, that really hurts our reliability. Where do we go for captaincy? Where do we go for transfers out? Do we transfer these guys out? Who can we bring in that's reliable? In the midfield, honestly, I don't see a lot of cheap options, and that's why I went with Son. I think he sort of is the one, maybe the only one at the moment. As far as captaincy goes, it's kind of tough because I would expect the most likely outcome for all the City players to be that they play in one and get benched in the other. Maybe it's not the most likely outcome, but it's certainly very likely to happen. I would suggest that the player most likely to start both is probably KDB. I'm certainly not going to get him in, but if you have him, I think I would captain him. Other than that, you could make the argument for captaining somebody like Son or Salah. I think they have pretty decent fixtures. With that said, if we scroll down a little bit here, we can see Crystal Palace have actually defended pretty well recently, and they've made a big change. They kept 2 clean sheets in the double. They kept the clean sheet here with Manchester United, as well as against Fulham, which perhaps isn't that impressive. But they were both at home, so maybe that makes a slight difference, and they're away against Tottenham. So if you think that's important, then maybe that's a reason for why Son isn't that bad. But the fixtures of Crystal Palace, Son, I could see them, keeping it to a 1-2-0, which isn't bad. Son could easily get an assist or two. So I definitely think Son's a captaincy option as well as Salah. Salah's numbers have still been decent, but when you watch them play, it's as a team, it's not great. So I'm probably going to lean towards Gundogan. Now, his numbers have been good in terms of attacking returns. I'm worried that he gets played in the United game and then benched against Southampton, but we don't really know. And with sort of, as I mentioned, with a lot of unreliable options elsewhere, me not being too sold on anybody else, I think it's worth the risk that he starts both, or at least plays in both, and has a decent role of getting at least one return. If he just gets one goal in one game, I'm perfectly happy with that. He could easily get double digits that way. So I think I'm going to go with one of the Man City guys. I think Cancelo and Stones, again, because of the lack of options elsewhere, are captaincy options. I would suggest that Stones is a little more likely to play both. I actually don't know about that. I was thinking that for a while, but Cancelo's played a lot of minutes recently. It just depends on how you interpret that, right? He played a lot of minutes, and then he finally got to sort of, I suppose, the Pep threshold here, where he finally got benched this one game. So you could make the argument that he goes back to playing 90 minutes pretty much every game again. They play on the 7th and then the 10th, I think, or the 12th. So I think there's a decent chance Cancelo plays both. Man City did concede in their last 2 games, however, so maybe that puts us off a little bit. I think Gundogan is the safest option. He's got 2 games, and he plays for Man City's attack. And we know he can get into the box and get tap-ins, which is very nice. And there's a chance he'll take the penalties, but it's probably KDB. I wouldn't personally go for Ings. I think Southampton simply aren't good enough. I could see United causing them, Sheffield United that is, causing them issues. And obviously Man City. You wouldn't really expect them to score, but I'm perfectly happy to have Ings in my team. With that said, the only decision that I personally have to make is Calvert-Lewin versus Target. I could play both. I really could play Target over Calvert-Lewin if I knew that they would come out in like a 4-2-3-1 style that is Everton. I would like Calvert-Lewin in that formation. It's still Chelsea. It's still a tough matchup. And that's where I'll talk about these small percentage chance things that I might do because, I don't know. I never know. But I could get rid of Target and bring in Pereira. I was looking at it. If I could do Lowton to Pereira, that's Ricardo Pereira from Leicester, I would really like to do that, but I don't have enough money, and it would be a -4, and that way I could bench Calvert-Lewin against Chelsea and play a Leicester defender who hasn't had the most expected assists or expected goals, but he gets in good positions, or he did last match at least when I watched it, and they have good fixtures. There's really nothing to say about this. Brighton can't score. They suck at finishing at the moment. Absolutely terrible. And so then they play Brighton, Sheffield United in the next 2. That could be high upside for Pereira. If he gets 1 attacking return with a clean sheet, we're looking at a 3 bonus game most likely. And then that's obviously very nice. That's the reason a lot of us brought Barnes in for the good fixtures. So I like the Leicester defenders if you're not looking for someone that plays in Gameweek 29. Ricardo Pereira would be my pick there. I just don't think it doesn't really work out for me to bring him in. I'm not going to transfer out Target when he has the double game week. So there's a chance that double game week 28 happens where Villa have a double, I believe. Let's go to Matt Target real quick. And we can see that he has the game in hand here against Everton. So that could mean that Everton and Aston Villa could play in 28. That's what people have been speculating. So I would say hold on to Everton and Villa players if you can for now. Calvert-Lewin hasn't been great, of course, but he's probably the highly owned option, and you probably just want to keep him. I think benching him is what you would probably want to do this week, though. But yeah, so Pereira's my pick for defenders if you had to choose, besides the double game week guys or blank game weeks if you need those. Mount at midfield, I really like him. And as far as forwards go, it's really all about Kane. I mean, he plays in the double. I mean, he plays in the blank, and he's simply too good for a team that's been a little bit more reliable than most at the moment. And Kane's been involved a lot, obviously, on penalties. He's always going to be their talisman, and he's always going to play 90 minutes. So, Mr. Reliable there, I suppose. But again, there's no real clear way from him into my team besides Barnes downgraded and eventually getting rid of Ings. But I'm not interested in doing that this week, and maybe not in the future because of good fixtures. So the last thing I want to mention, obviously getting rid of Bruno and Salah is a big talking point at the moment. I personally don't think I would be able to sell Salah before Fulham. And then Bruno, if you can just manage to keep him 1 week, I would probably play him against Man City, to be honest. If you're going to free hit 29, it makes more sense, like I am, because we get West Ham and then Brighton. So I think for the next 2 or 3, you could get away with selling Bruno. After that, they play Brighton, Tottenham, and Burnley, Leeds. That could be decent. After the blank, it's basically just solid fixtures, some good, some bad. I think getting rid of Bruno makes sense for a lot of people, but for me, when the blank isn't an issue, it makes it a little bit better after the next 2. For some reason, though, I will say I just feel like Bruno is going to do something against West Ham, but I guess that's just a gut feeling I get. So if you haven't already and you watched this far into the video, please like and subscribe. You know, my subscribers are statistically less likely to get struck by lightning, so go ahead and do that, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good game week.